What do you think that people following spiritual paths are getting wrong?
Okie dokie. Well, there's a lot to that because there are a lot of spiritual and other kinds of belief systems that people follow. They engage in all kinds of practices and beliefs. Now, in my world, if we're going to talk about, because you asked me, what are they getting wrong? They can only get something wrong if, if they're not doing something right. So there has to be a contrast there. So I'm going to contrast that to the work I do, say, and what I think is valid and useful versus what I don't think is valid and useful. And I think following blind beliefs is not valid nor useful. See, like religions are not really valid or useful for my kind of work. They might be useful for, say, creating a sense of community, for, I don't know, cook-offs, gatherings, They might be useful for people, coming together and feeling like they have something to make their woes better because they believe in this religion or something. Okay, all right. But I don't care about that. I don't care to make people comfortable in that way or distract them or whatever, or to become a community organizer. All right, that's not what this work is about. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but you shouldn't confuse it with the truth. And that's what bugs me. It's like when we start confusing a belief system with the truth, or a religion with the truth, because they are not. They are not, by definition. They cannot be the truth. When you believe something, you're just imagining a truth. You're not experiencing it. You're not becoming conscious of it. There's no insight. There's even no responsibility. All there is belief. You believe in something. I could tell you to believe in, I don't know, the moon's made out of green cheese, and you could believe that. See, and you probably won't because you know it's not. But if you did, still, what do you know? See? And the fact that the moon is not made out of green cheese is irrelevant to your belief. Anyway, see, so you could believe in a soul, you could believe in God, you could believe in all kinds of things. Does that mean there is no God? No. It means you have no idea if there's a God or not. And whatever that's really about, you're not conscious of, you don't experience. So believing in something is worthless. It's actually worse than worthless, because what it does is it displaces any search or investigation of the truth, any real wondering about what's true. You hear in religions that people like priests, whatever, ministers, they have crisis of faith. You say, what's that about? That's when they start wondering. You know what I'm saying? And they go, whoa, is this real? Is this true? I'm just believing it. See, and that becomes a crisis because it is a crisis of faith. I have faith. So what? I have hope. That doesn't mean anything's going to turn out because I have hope. Hope is really a lame activity if you want to get something done. Okay? Or whatever, find the truth. But in any case, so all the belief systems that are just about believing things and have nothing to do with a genuine search or investigation or desire to know what's actually true directly and for yourself are not relative to a discussion about what's true or about this work, about consciousness work, you see? They are different than that. So now you can see that rules out 90% of all religions and belief systems, traditions, and also modern ones. Now the modern ones are mostly based on newer ideas, psychology, physics, whatever, and people just cobbling together another belief system and then throw in some elements that seem to resonate or whatever, and then creating a belief system. And again, not useful. Not useful. So what are they getting wrong? Well, What the fundamental thing they're getting wrong is not grasping, not noticing that believing in stuff is not the same thing as directly becoming conscious of stuff. Okay? Those are so completely different. As a matter of fact, believing in stuff is antithetical to pursuing a direct consciousness. A direct consciousness, in whatever way you want to hold that, is you're personally involved and you have insight. You see, you grasp whatever's true. Now, what are the practices or traditions that are aligned with that notion? Say, well, stuff like Zen, and maybe Vipassana, and maybe, I don't know, maybe Tibetan Buddhism. I never spent enough time with Tibetan Buddhism to know if they personally participate, but I imagine they would. Or something else along those lines. See, and then still, I would say, are they getting something wrong? Yeah. See, so any how do I say this? Any practice, organization, whatever, that is that encourages and works with people to directly themselves become conscious of what's true. Enlightenment, for example, or just what's true on any level, That's good. At least they're participating, right? See? They're working on it. That's good. And then, as you yourself well know, every practice of that kind that I've been exposed to, that I've seen, they have lots and lots of traps. They have many, paraphernalia, clothes, ideas, beliefs, assumptions that they don't recognize. The practice is built around assumptions, you see? See, like you assume Buddha is completely correct. Now, if you're a Buddhist, what else are you going to do? See, but that assumption gets in the way, doesn't it? See, because you hold yourself as so much less than Buddha, and I can appreciate that sentiment, because the myth of Buddha is like, well, hey, it's right up there, It's hard to live up to that. But again, it's a myth. You never met Buddha. I never met Buddha. All we do is we have hearsay written by people, not by him. He never wrote anything. See? Or Jesus. He didn't write anything. It's written by people after the fact and from memory. Now, I don't know if you think people's memory is always accurate, but I experience it as not. But in any case, you see, still, shouldn't trust the myth. You see, like for example, whoever questions the fact that every statue of Buddha, he's not only a relatively young man, his hair is impeccable. I mean, come on, See, now, you think that was true of Buddha. You think he woke up, went to sleep, like whatever he did and however he did it, and had this incredibly coiffed hair, incredibly perfect hair? No. Do you think he remained young? No. He died in his 80s, for crying out loud. But they never show anything with him as a wrinkled old man. They should. I mean, really. But again, more than likely, people don't even think about these stupid little things, right? See, but more than likely, statues of Buddha were created long after Buddha was dead. I don't know what based them, like paintings of Jesus. They have nothing to do with Jesus. Whoever Jesus was, he was not a blue-eyed blonde. That's pretty much guaranteed, all right? See, but, people just create these images and then love the images. And then those images go forward. Buddha, they okay, let's create what we think is an image of Buddha, and so they always give him that hair. It's kind of like the Greeks. You ever notice the Greek gods and their statues, or they're just the Greek people and the ancient Greeks, and their statues, they always have that really great curly hair. Do you think all the Greeks actually had really great curly hair? No. No, that was the style. Some of the people, because I did some research on this, but some of the people, right, that they actually had in the statues, made statues of them because they were famous, were bald. But they didn't want to go down in history as a bald guy or whatever, or your crazy hair. They said, no, we love this hair. Everybody loved that hair. Okay, that became the style. And so everybody got that hair. Anyway, I'm just saying, you see, probably it's the same thing with Buddha. I'm not equating Buddha with the ancient Greeks, but hey, I'm equating Buddha's statue with the ancient Greek statues. In any case, yes, sir.
I keep thinking to ask, why do you say they're getting it wrong?
I didn't, you did.
Well, at the beginning, it's like, what are people that are doing spiritual things, like, what are they getting wrong? And it seems like you have a standpoint about wrong, and of course, like, I agree with you in the sense, like, I've spent a lot of time with you, so it's like I get it, but like, why say it's wrong?
Okay, once again, I didn't, you did. Okay, and wrong, I'm explaining that. Okay, see, like, first of all, the not investigating simple things, right? Not recognizing the difference between, like, if I wanted to discover something in the science world, and then what we have is the scientific method, and it demands some rigor and proof, and being able to prove, more than one person being able to do experiments, blah, 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 right? So it's a certain kind of rigor that has to be applied to the scientific method. Well, if somebody came into the science community and didn't follow that rigor, but instead simply believed something was true and claimed and asserted it was true without any research, without any proof, etc., well, in the world of science, that would be considered wrong. See, no, that's not science. That's superstition, or that's a belief, or you're just making stuff up. See, yeah. In any case, so in the world of consciousness, say, direct experience, the work that I do, if you're just making stuff up, that's wrong, too. If you're saying it's consciousness. If you're saying it's just stuff you made up, and you're like, okay, no problem. You make it up and believe. You can believe, I don't know, God is a horsefly. It's like, I don't care. It doesn't. It's irrelevant, because it's just a belief. It's a fantasy, and people going down roads of fantasy are not pursuing what's true. And let me tell you, people go down roads of fantasy. People go down roads of fantasy easily. They love fantasy. And anytime you're catering to fantasy, which most so-called spiritual teachers or whatever do, they cater to fantasy. What do people want to hear? They want to hear love. They want to hear how, oneness with the universe. They want to hear how special you are and how great you are, and that you are, I don't know, God or something, or you are transcendent, and you're blah, 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 and everything's light and love, blah, blah, blah. Okay, cool, but that's all a fantasy, See, whether it's true or not is unknown and irrelevant. You could be the devil, or you could be, a piece of shit. You know what I'm saying? Say whatever. See, it's wide open. The truth is you don't know. And pursuing a belief because you like it, because it approves of you, because it makes you feel good, because it's what you want to believe about reality and about life and about yourself. Fine. That's not pursuing the truth. The truth is independent of you. It's independent of what you believe. It's independent of how you want it to turn out. Kind of like that science thing. It's like you have to let it turn out the way it turns out. And so if you're pursuing it like a belief, see, take a look at like all the Zen monasteries, Zen people practicing Zen, right? Now I'm sure, see, like a lot of people practicing Zen throw their heart and soul into it, and they try really hard. But what are they trying really hard at? They're trying really hard, probably, at enlightenment. What is enlightenment? They don't know. They don't know what enlightenment is. That means they're trying really hard at something they believe and have been told. See, here's it's really good, it's really good, it's really good. Okay, all right. See, and they trust in that their people came before them and they have had this, and that's fine, enlightenment. But then you see, then there's all the people that wear the robes, call themselves, Roshi and this and that. Or are they Japanese? Oh, in Japan they might be. But everybody else, they're not. You follow? That's like, Hare Krishna, shaving your head and having a little top knot on there, whatever, dancing with beads and bells and stuff like that. Well, okie dokie. What does that have to do with any kind of spirituality? It does not. It has nothing to do. Probably. And the robes are making this from India. And the food they ate was from India. I know, I saw them in California way back in the day. I know they don't seem to exist anymore, but still, See, they're doing an Indian thing. And then some people do an Indian thing, they have a guru in India, and they change their name to an Indian name. Why? See, lots of people, I know lots of people, personally, who've done that. You see, because they think it's going to make them more special and spiritual because now they have a name that's an Indian name. No, that's bullshit. Why would a sound and a word help you become enlightened? It doesn't. See, but people ignore this. And the robes and beads and shaving your head, what does that have to do with pursuing the truth? Nothing. And it has nothing to do with it. Now, kind of all that being said, maybe, shaving your head helps you become humble, less vain or something. Okay, cool. And maybe that helps you pursue the truth. I don't know. Maybe. But it doesn't really matter. The robes, the Japanese. They're Japanese. They're not only Japanese, they're old Japanese. You see. Etc. See, now, beyond the paraphernalia, that attaches itself. And whenever we have these kinds of things, it's almost always paraphernalia that attaches itself. Some of it might be, well-meaning. Some of it might be innocuous. Okay. Some of it is just outright stupid and ridiculous. Okay? Have you ever seen the hats that the bishops wear? I mean, come on. It's just ridiculous. All right? And it serves no function except showing that, you're a bishop. Aren't you great? Aren't you great? What does that have to do with Jesus? Nothing. Nothing. Did you ever read what Jesus is supposed to have said? There's not one word about hats in it. And there's sure a lot of words about not being special. In any case. Yeah. See, and we get lost in that kind of stuff. Yeah. But in any case, beyond that, the paraphernalia and whatnot, there's the belief systems themselves. See, now, like I said, the belief systems that are just founded on blind faith and just believing in something because somebody says so, because some, path says so, is not what I do. Okay, that's not useful. It's stupid and idiotic. Come on, See, that's not the pursuit of consciousness. By definition, come on. I mean, you yourself know, any of you out there in, Radio Land or whatever this is, any of you, it's like who have done some, followed some belief system, some path, right? You know very well. It wasn't you. It was you doing something people told you to do. It was outside of you. It was you believing in something and you forming a fantasy, forming an image of what it is they're saying reality is like, and then pursuing that. That's a completely different pursuit than pursuing what's true, what's really true. I understand there's lots and lots of difficulty in pursuing what's true. Yeah. But difficulty aside, that's our problem, okay? That's not the truth's problem, right? See, we're just so gummied up with mind and everything, we cannot see the truth all at once. So usually we get in little bite-sized pieces, a little who am I, what am I kind of stuff, right? See, or we have some insight or realization about, what's going on with our minds or how we are or whatever, some existential assumption. So we start getting these bite-sized pieces and they go, oh, it's true, it's true, it's true. But some of the foundation there is missed completely. We don't see it at all, see? And so once we become conscious of that, some of the things that we thought were true are not untrue. They're not false. If they were, real, they were just limited. And because they were so limited, it's like, oh, that's not really what's true, kind of thing. And I know that sounds kind of stupid too, but in any case, you can't fall. You might have heard me say somewhere a story about Anne, When I was in France some time ago, I was teaching in Aubuterre, and I had an apprentice there, and his wife came to cook meals for us. And she was cooking meals, and then we'd sit down and have dinner at the end of training or whatever. And it turned out, and she told me, and she sat next to me in the big table, and then she started asking me questions about consciousness work. That's okie dokie. So I'd interrupt my wine and gruel, or and respond, and then go back to the chit chat of the table, And then she'd ask me another question, I respond, and go back to chit chat at the table. And then later she said that she had been, much later I believe, she said she had been a Buddhist in India, in some kind of monastery place, thingamajigger, ashram, whatever, in India for about 8 years, if I remember correctly. I think it was 8 years. And she was there, trying to get enlightened and doing all this stuff, going through the motions. And she said that she had a breakthrough. She had an awakening of some kind, and was very excited about it. It was really clear that it was true, but that when she went to the other people, the higher up, the teachers, whatever, and shared it, they said, no, basically, as I understand it, you can't have that. You're not a special person. You're just a plebe, you're just whatever the status was, saying, like you're not ready for it, and whatever, you haven't gone through the hierarchy enough, or whatever it was. I don't know. I'm just making that up. But in any case, they poo-pooed it, and so she started to question, their bona fides. She started to question whether they were being real or not. And then as she looked into it from her new perspective, she saw they were not being real. They were not telling her the truth. Probably because they did not know the truth. See, they were believers. And they were like entrenched believers, you see, in this world. So what? Okay, great. That doesn't do much, does it? So you enter a practice and you get really good at all the beliefs and all the, you can sit a certain way, breathe a certain way, I don't know, balance a spoon on your nose, I don't know, whatever the practice is, and you get really good at it. And stuff over time, you go, yes, I am so spiritual, I'm so great. But what have you actually accomplished? You can balance a spoon on your nose. You know how to sit straight and breathe right. You know how to maybe control your mind a little bit. Okay, good. You know all the beliefs and the ins and outs and the arguments. Okay, good. So what have you become conscious of? You know what? Nothing. Nothing. See, it's going to surprise a lot of people, okay? You haven't become conscious of anything. You've managed to achieve certain things in the world of belief and concept and physical things, whatever, mental things. Fine, good. And I hope they serve you and I hope they're good, but that doesn't mean you're conscious of anything. You see what I'm saying? So if you're following a belief system, no matter what it is, and hopefully it's a good one, and hopefully they're doing their best. But no matter what it is, if you're doing that, and you yourself are not taking on the responsibility of grasping what's true, regardless of the beliefs, regardless of hearsay, certainly you can use people's help, especially if they've been through a lot, and maybe they've made breakthroughs on their own. Hopefully, you see, you could use their help. Yeah, sure. See, but in the end, it's up to you. And you have to grasp what's true, not what's heard. Not what's heard. I'm going to say that again. Not what's heard. Okay? See, people will contemplate endlessly, trying to experience what they've heard. And sometimes the mind is so good, if you do enough work and you traumatize it enough and you put yourself into states and blah, 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 you'll come up with something that matches what's heard. And you'll be excited about it. You go, oh, great. Hey, I got it. I got, the blue pearl or whatever it is, you see? Yeah. No thanks. See? Trying to reproduce something that's heard, trying to match your belief systems with your experience to your belief systems is not what the truth is about. The truth is about what's true, independent of anything heard. See, and anybody who's actually grasped what's true, and I'm talking now mostly what's absolutely true, you see, but anybody who's grasped that, they did it themselves. They didn't follow a formula to do it. They might have followed, in some cases, they might have followed a formula. They might have gone through like Zen this and Zen that and argument this and argument that, and belief this and, training that and sashins, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And they listened to their teacher and they tried really hard and all that. Fine. That didn't do it. That kind of put them in the ballpark. That put them in it kept them contemplating. Okay, it kept them busy. But then when they got it, they got it. They didn't, and they got it because it was true, not because of what was said, not because of all the rituals they went through. And a lot of people, like say Buddha or Ramana Maharshi, and I don't know, others, Ralston. Anyway, they got it because they were going for it. You see, that it's not because they were not following a dogma. They weren't following traditions. There was no tradition that Buddha was following. He did many traditions, and he gave them up. It's good to take a look what's out there. What do people got? What do you got? Try this, try that, whatever. Okay, fine, you see. But in the end, see, and he gave it, and had to do it himself. Ramana was just a teenager, and he just looking into death. He wasn't following a formula. In any case, you see, that's what you need is to grasp what's true. And if you're not doing that, and most traditions, most spiritual belief systems, etc., are not doing that, just take a look, all right? I didn't finish with Anne. Yeah, so you see, she said that if I get it right, and excuse me, Anne, if I've got anything wrong, you can email me and tell me if you listen to this, what I got wrong. But that, so she left, and she kept up a certain kind of practice because she believed in it and had made a vow to do that, But she just left otherwise and just became a mom and lived life until she met this guy at dinner and was asking questions, and he was responding in such a way that it sparked her interest in pursuing what's true again. See, so, she's also the one who translated the Book of Not Knowing into French, by the way. In any case, so she got excited about that, all right? It's different. See, what we do is different than what most people do. When I lived in the jungle, I had an old school, I taught, and in the Bay Area, this is the San Francisco Bay Area, especially back then, there's just lots and lots of, opportunities. There's lots of fantasies running around. There's lots of practices running around. There's lots of gurus. There's lots of teachers. There's lots of, masters and all that kind of stuff, right? And or wannabes. And, so that was just kind of the environment. And so I did my work. I didn't worry about I studied with some other people, and I looked into what they were doing, yeah. But I was trying to do work based on what I had become conscious of, yeah, and trying to find ways of doing that myself. And certainly, I learned from others. You see, the whole idea of a workshop I did not invent. The whole idea of a diet I did not invent. You see, the whole idea of lecture I did not invent. Most of those people didn't invent them either. What I'm saying? But these are just methods. So, and then, okay, like, what are we going to communicate? What are we going to do to make a difference in people's consciousness or in their lives? In any case, when I left the Bay Area and I lived in the jungle for a few years in a mountain in Hawaii, I stopped teaching and blah, blah. And anyway, at some point I came back. And when I came back, I noticed things differently when I came back into the world to start teaching again. And I noticed things differently. And before that, I thought, there's, plenty of other people doing good work. Plenty of other people doing the same kind of stuff I'm doing. It's fine. When I came back, I realized, no, nobody was doing what I was doing. This really shocked me, surprised me, actually kind of dismayed me. It's like they're not actually doing what I was doing. They're not actually doing it. They may be in some cases doing good work. Okay, there are people out there doing good work. It's beneficial to people, and there are some people actually helping people question for themselves and stuff like that. But they weren't doing the same thing I was doing, and too many of them were trapped in beliefs or limited to a particular goals that weren't my goals, weren't the same as what I'm trying to do. So in any case, I started the work again with that, and that was different, and it's been interesting, so challenging. People have asked me over time in different settings, well, what about this person? What about that person? Could you look at this person? Could you go see that person and tell me what you think? Because they think that might be similar to what you're doing, or they think, well, that person, that's pretty interesting. That's good stuff. And every case I can think of comes to mind right now. They weren't even close. They weren't even close. See, so that you mean you really don't get the spirit of the work I do. You really don't get what I'm doing here. I'm not asking you to believe anything. They are, okay? I'm not asking you to say, okay, this is the right way and only way, because you don't really know what way it is, see? Except that it's open and committed to the truth, which should be the only way, all right? See, you know what I'm saying? See, I'm not like, I'm not asking you, anybody, to try to, like what my mind, as a person, what my mind comes up with, and how I say things, how I go about things, etc., is my mind. I'm not asking you to reproduce that. I don't think you could. But, you know, for better or for worse, I'm just saying, like, that's what my mind does. But I am asking you to reproduce the spirit, the principle here, which is to discover what's true, that's the commitment. See? And that whatever, if I believe something, it's irrelevant. You see? And if I tell you something, I believe this, I will certainly tell you that I believe it. You know, and I don't expect you to believe it. And I really avoid that. How many times have you heard me saying, oh, I believe this? You know, it's like saying, you know, my opinions, my beliefs are irrelevant. I try not to have them much. Except in certain worlds. You know, certain, human worlds, okay? But about this stuff, no. No. You see? And then, so I look and watch, for, again, the spirit of it. And I'll watch the person speaking and what they're doing. And one of the things I ask at the end of their diatribe, at the end of their spiel, is, does it make any difference? Does it empower anybody? And is it based on the truth and personal experience? See, and the answer is almost always no, no, no. Was it entertaining? Yeah, sure. It was entertaining. Hope, it's entertaining. Did they sound like they believed in what they were talking about? Yeah. Did they have stuff worked out, some kind of cosmology that they're pushing? Yeah, sure they did. Okay, now after all that, and their predictions and their declarations and their assertions and their stories, is anybody empowered because of it? No. Does it encourage anybody to question for themselves what's actually true? No. They're feeding people's beliefs. They want people to believe something. I said, well, no, that's not like my work at all. See? And that people can't tell the difference is kind of dismaying. It's like, really? You can't tell the difference between that. See? Okay, there's one person, for example, one woman, and she's confident, belting out her assertions, talking to her followers, making them wrong. And I saw nowhere in there was she empowering anybody, and nowhere in there was she asking them to question for real. She was basically laying out that they're wrong, she's right, and they need to worship that, her rightness. You see? Now, you probably wouldn't get that listening to her, but that's what I got listening to her. See? Because I'm asking from a different point of view, all right? See? And I'm not swayed by people's charm and their assertiveness, Yeah. And the fact that she's made up a cosmology, in other words, a way of looking at the universe and everything and blah, 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 that she's asserting is true. It's not true. It's not true. None of it's true. No cosmology is true. No belief system is true. All right? In any case, she was doing that. And so she didn't have students. She had followers. She doesn't have people that she's empowering or to question, you see, to discover, to even benefit themselves, really. It's just a cult, basically. It's just a cult. It's just like, following stuff. It's large following. I won't mention any names or point any fingers, but her name is Teal Swan. And it's bad news. Okay? It's not. I don't support that at all. And there are quite a few others. Some traditional, some not traditional. Traditions tend to get lost in the rituals. They've been handed down, the rituals and the beliefs and this and that, the dogma. And then the new ones, they tend to get, like I said, lost in some kind of psychological paradigm often, and some kind of cosmological archetype of the way things go. No, it's not useful. It's not useful. So I'm not saying that there's not useful stuff out there. I am saying it's rare. I am saying it's not common. What is more common is the fantasies. People are so gullible, and they'll buy into a fantasy. It sounds good. Yeah, okay, but that's different than the work, and so that's why I say it's wrong. They're getting that wrong. Okay, it's not real consciousness work. All right. Hopefully it pushes them in a little direction, whatever. And they transcend it. It's a little like, like in the martial arts, right? When you start martial arts, what do? You have to learn from somebody, because you don't know, right? You don't know how to do those things. And people have spent a lot of time working out how to throw somebody, how to punch somebody, how to kick, how to do, whatever it is. How to use joints and stuff. See, how to grapple. And so when you study with somebody, you learn things you wouldn't have come up with on yourself, or at least very quickly. See, that's fine. But then you'll follow this tradition and that tradition and that tradition, and there's this art and that art and the art. And which one's the real art? None of them. And then you start to notice that, well, many of the arts are just paper tigers. They're not actual martial arts. They're not actual fighting arts. See? And if you're sober and you look at it clearly, you see that. Even though you did it for a long time and you're really excited about it and you love the fantasy of it and the Karate Kid, the whatever, the flow your key, whatever, It's like whatever you were into, whatever that thing was into, and then you start noticing that they all have their own fantasy, their own little world, and they're all living inside that little world, acting it out in their school, you see, and that belief system. Are they becoming, real fighters? And you see that in 90% of the time, no, not at all. That's not what they're doing. They're studying this thing, this fantasy and belief system that has something to do with fighting. See, so then you get past that and you start noticing the ones that actually fight, the ones that are actually doing something. Okay, good. They're actually doing something. And then you notice the ones that are actually doing something, grappling, or kicking, or, boxing, fencing, whatever it is, right? Wrestling, whatever. They're actually doing something that develops skills in the fighting domain, but then you start to see, but they're limited. They're only doing this aspect or that aspect or the other aspect. Why? What is actual fighting? Is it just this thing? Is it just grappling? No. Is it just boxing? No. Is it just fencing? No. See, fighting is fighting. It's wide open. See, and then you start wondering, okay, now what is fighting really? But you have a lot of background now, you see, because you've done every martial art there is known to man, right? All over the planet, see? You've done that, you've mastered it, you've gotten, good at it, see? And you've gone beyond them and you've let them all go, okay? See, so once you get good at something, once you master something, you see, you can question it from a different standpoint, and then you can ask, is it valid? See? Is it what I want to be doing, whatever. So, and then you can let it go. If it's not, then none of them are. So then you start letting them go, and then you investigate for yourself from the ground up what's true. So it's the same thing with spiritual practices, right? If you don't know squat, right? And you hear somebody say, "Oh, look, we're doing enlightenment stuff. Oh, here we're transcending. We're trying to turn our body into light." Oh, no, you got that wrong. You misunderstand. But you see, you might do that for a while. Okay, good. Keeps you off the street, gets you something to do. And maybe it's helpful, maybe it's useful in some ways. See, but pretty quick, you notice, wait a minute, this is what they're doing. This is not an investigation of what's true. That's not what we're up to here. Ah, okay, good. Okay, thank you for sharing. Move on. Now, you might want to do some, practice, right? Like maybe you do yoga or something that helps you with your body, or vipassana that helps you with your mind, or, it's meditation or mindfulness or something like that that helps you, calm down or pay attention to some basic things, that'd be useful to you as a human being and as a body. And there's nothing wrong with those practices. There's a lot of right, you see, which is to say there's a lot of use and value you can get as a person, you see, from practices like that. So yeah, but don't conflate those with the truth. They're not true. Yoga's not true. Mindfulness is not true. It's a practice. Vipassana, it's like they're not true. They're just beneficial practices. You see what I'm saying? Tai Chi, whatever. It's not true. And it might benefit you in some ways. Good. Do it. But that's benefiting you as a person, not the truth. So you see what I just did there? I made a distinction between you as a person and the truth. They're not the same thing. The truth is the truth. You are you. And you're up to you, right? You're up to mischief. Right? That your whole world is based on you, is about you. The truth is about the truth. It's about what's true. See, and it's hard for people, isn't it? Isn't it? I mean, you're listening to me now, right? It's hard for people. It's probably hard for you to grasp that you're not important. See? It's not about you. What? No, the truth has to be about me. It has to acknowledge me, and it has to be me enlightened and me in bliss, right? No, it doesn't. It just has to be what's true. You have nothing to do with that. Now, it might be what's true of you, what's true about you, or what is truly going on with you, what you're doing. Okay, good. Then that's true. But again, it's independent of what you want. It's independent of you benefiting. It's just what's true. And any benefits are secondary. See, if you get freed of something because you realize your mind is going down unfruitful roads, great. See? But that's because you grasp that you're doing something, and then you realize that's unfruitful. But you see, you grasp that you're doing something with your mind. Oh, and now you don't have to do it. Is that beneficial? Yeah, if what you were doing was fucked up, okay? If what you were doing was causing suffering, yes, that's quite beneficial for you in your experience, yes? See? But it's based on grasping what's true about what you're doing. You follow? Yeah. I mean, you could try all day, and I'm sure you have, trying to free yourself from the suffering, or trying to, change your mind without really knowing what's going on, and you fail. Don't you? You fail over and over again. Sometimes you'll make some success by, sitting by the babbling brook or back there, or, doing mindfulness, or doing some meditation or something like that, and you feel better about yourself. But again, you don't even know why. I do. Anyway, but that's for me to know and you to find out. In any case, you see? But that's looking for the wrong thing. See, when you're looking for an outcome, you're not looking for what's true. You're looking for an outcome. See? Those are two different things. See, and any time, we're just focused on attaining some outcome or some benefit or some pleasure or something, we start to get lost in what's good for me, not what's true. Period. Independent of me. And I would share with you that if you want what's really true, it has to be independent of you. You're never going to get what's really true yourself, as yourself. Say, locked into yourself. Okay? I'm not saying there's anything wrong with you. As a matter of fact, there's nothing wrong with you. Okay? In so many ways, there's nothing wrong with you. And you can hear that whatever way you like, and you'll probably choose the one that makes you feel good. You know, ooh, there's nothing wrong with me. Oh, good, good. Like that. But I'm saying it's just a fact. But that's another story. In any case, that's a different matter. I'm just saying, you know, it's going to be useful to consider, at least, that, you know, you're not the end all to the universe, yeah, to existence or to what's absolutely true. All right, you're just you. Okay, you're just a small thing. You're a limited version. All right. I was looking at this cartoon, you know, by Guido Sarducci. It was one of the newsletters. I think I put it in one of the newsletters, I believe. You know, by Guido Sarducci. He's a comic who plays a priest in the old days with the Saturday Night Live. And he says, well, hey, if people are made in God's image, shouldn't we be like invisible? I like that. Anyway. Okay, I guess that's enough on this subject.